back up. You are somebody who I have been told repeatedly should appear as a guest.
I'm honored. I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse for you, but okay.
We're going to find out today. I don't know. You have some wealth of knowledge that everybody seems to just say, you got to mind this guy. You got to talk to him. He knows where all the bodies are. So
yeah. I'll give you a few of them.
Find out where the bodies are.
Thanks for having me on.
No problem. No problem. So why don't we start with the basics? Full name, where you work, what you do, that kind of stuff, and then we'll just milk it from there.
Well, I'm Matt Newton. I'm the Bureau Chief for Film and Digital Media, and that's the Bureau is located within Travel and Tourism in the Department of Business and Economic Affairs. It is today. It's been bounced around over the years. I've been doing state government for almost 17 years now, and I've been involved with the film office since the start, more of a part-time capacity. I actually started in tourism, believe it or not. It's all come full circle. And the film office was over in tourism back in 98 up until about 2004. And I came on board about 2002, and I was working sort of a half position, part-time with the film office, which is what I wanted to do, and half the time with tourism and their duties. And then the film office got moved over to the Department of Cultural Resources. And then soon after that, I was brought on over there as director. That was 2005. So I've been heading up that film office ever since 2005.
Okay.
So it's been a lot of time.
So it's interesting to me that it falls under the tourism, excuse me, falls under the tourism heading. And I'm guessing there's a reason for that. I mean, no other theater doesn't, and performing arts for the most part are not. I had Virginia Lupi in here a couple of weeks ago. They're separate. They're not really under that umbrella either. How does that happen?
Most of my counterparts in other states, and there's usually a film office either at the state level or regionally in every state around the country. There are a few exceptions, but most of them fall under travel and tourism or economic development. Travel and tourism actually falls under economic development, the department.
Got you.
Here, so it makes sense. What I do at the film office primarily, in many respects, is what tourism does. They market the state for visitors to get them to come to the state, get them to spend their money here, stay in our hotels, eat at our restaurants, and then they leave and having dropped a bunch of cash here. I do the same thing, except it's very tailored for the entertainment industry. Those are my visitors. Those are the folks that I'm trying to get here. At the same token, it's not just about the economic development. It's about building an infrastructure here locally that can sustain some sort of a film industry, a television, digital media. And so my job is to work with local filmmakers and organizations in our communities so they know how to host productions, best practices, what happens when things come up, issues come up. I act as a buffer many times between productions and communities. And so I guess when you all circle back, it's all about economic development because those productions will spend money here and businesses profit from that. So we're all working towards the same end. It's just interesting. Over the years, we've been trying to figure out exactly where that office belongs. And most recently, we felt that, maybe we should, now that certain departments were breaking apart and reorganizing and realigning, maybe this was an opportunity to bring the film office back over to the economic development side and into travel and tourism. So that's where we are today. Ask me again 5 years from now. We'll see.
Yeah, really.
We'll see.
Now, it's changed, right, over the years. What is its basic scope? Is it to attract filmmaking? Is it to assist filmmakers? I have to tell you, I went onto your website.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, it's weak. It's nothing but a database, basically. It just has a database of crew and database of sites that you might want to...
Yeah.
So I couldn't really get a feel for what the Bureau does.
Well, you know, in defense of that, it's, like I said, it was a recent transition. So at this point, it's just kind of getting myself onto that website, getting the Bureau there,
Gotcha.
getting the basic
So you
structure.
needed a presence.
Yeah, I needed a presence and the basic things that all productions are seeking, which is just sort of the basic, you know, questions and answers about shooting in New Hampshire.
Right.
A database of crew and a database of locations. Those are the primary things that all productions are going to be asking me about. And are usually the first questions that I'll get from a production. The scope of it, I think you have to kind of look back over history because it's definitely changed. Film offices came into existence going way back into like the golden age of movies. You know, when movies started getting out of Hollywood and going on locations. That was a very, very big deal back then because of the size of the equipment and the amount of people involved in production. It wasn't as easy as it is today. So going to a foreign area, whether you're in another country or just in the neighboring state, you do not have the lay of the land. You're not as familiar with it. So film commissions were born to assist that. There would be a point person in that state who could say, you're looking for mountainscapes, I've got their mountainscapes for you. You're looking for a desert location, you got to come over to this one. You know, that kind of thing. And I really think that stemmed out of a lot of the cowboy movies that were being made and heading out west and going to the desert lands. And there were people on the ground in Arizona and Utah that really knew the lay of the land, so they could assist those productions and get them what they needed. That evolved. And over the decades, it was really about location. It was about, we have a movie, it either takes place or there's something in the story that involves this location, the state, or wherever it is, the city. We're going to go there. We're going to be authentic, and we need you to help us get there. Today, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, it's not so much about the location as it is the financial incentive for the production. I would say we're at the verge of a bubble bursting, though. I'm seeing it go the other way. Producers and location managers are really starting to get interested again in location.
Oh, interesting.
In the looks. So we may be seeing another shift here, but that's sort of how film commissions evolved. And with the advent of film incentives, everybody began to compete. And that all started with Canada. You know, there was a financial incentive in Canada. Production started to move up there. So the states were like, well, how can we bring production back? And so they developed the same sort of financial incentives. And so states mirrored other states, so on and so forth. And now we've sort of like dropped to the bottom of the barrel where everybody's sort of competing against each other now. We can talk at length about that.
Well, I do want to get into that because I know that, you know, our brains are getting beat out by Massachusetts and Georgia, and who have these incredible tax incentives or rebates or whatever you want to call them, that to entice these people in. And I do want to get into that.
Yeah, but I just to finish your question,
Sure.
I would say that the scope of film commissions over the time, it was primarily about being that liaison. Now, as technology changes, it's getting very a lot easier to bring productions in and have smaller crews and have smaller gear and go wherever you need. And so the level of the assistance that a film office can provide has changed as well. It's very digital now, and how we turn around location photos and build packages for them. And we have to adapt. And it's not just about film anymore. I mean, you have television and you have web series is a huge component of what I do.
Oh my gosh.
You know, web production is huge. So as the technology changes, I think so does the scope of film commission.
So what are we talking dollar-wise? What's the impact to our state of digital film or digital/film?
Yeah. I wish I had a definite answer for everything. All I can tell you is the productions that have touched the film office in some way. And being a state that doesn't have a general statewide permitting process or anything, we don't require that. You could film here and leave and me not even know about it. And it happens all the time. So there's a lot of projects that I end up hearing about later on down the road. And most of the time, the larger projects will contact me just as a courtesy, or they'll need something. So I track a lot of data in the film office, and it goes back to about 2005. But it's only those projects that have touched the film office in such a way. I would say that on average, it's about 1.5 million that I see in expenditures from projects. We get small projects. We don't get big projects. So when you're comparing apples to apples, whether it's New Hampshire or Massachusetts, and they're getting the Hollywood films, and they'll come out of a year in the 200 million range, and New Hampshire is 1.5. It sort of makes you feel like, okay, well, New Hampshire's doing nothing. Well, that's not necessarily the case. And there's a lot of smaller independent projects that are coming here because, and again, this touches to incentives, many of the states that have the aggressive incentives are marketing to Hollywood. They're really pushing those projects. The smaller guy is kind of feeling left out of the picture a little bit. So they're looking to New Hampshire or other smaller states where they can come in and have some creative atmosphere in a small state and still leave their mark as far as their expenditures. So I would gladly take, 10 $1.5 million projects as opposed to the one $50 million project.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to work towards. And there's still that misconception that when you're talking about film offices and economic development with film, that it's strictly about theatrical film. And it's not. It's one of the biggest sectors of our industry here deals with either commercials or photo shoots. We have still photo shoots that happen all the time here in New Hampshire. Those run like a regular production. They come in with their grip trucks and lights and their producers and their crew, and they'll shoot still photos for magazines or print ads or catalog shoots, that kind of thing. So there's this notion that, we have a state government office that's just catering to Hollywood. That's not the case. So we have production companies and creative agencies here in the state that do a lot of work, and we're attracting the same type of production companies and creative agencies from outer state. So it's not just about Hollywood. I wish there was more Hollywood. I really do. It's tough when the only Hollywood film shot from beginning to end in New Hampshire is on Golden Pond, and that was almost 40 years ago. That's what we're still talking about.
Right.
The residual effect of that film is still great. I mean, people are talking about it.
It's sold out at the play up at the Winnie Playhouse right now.
Exactly. It's hugely popular. People come every year looking for those locations, Squam Lake. They call every year looking for it. So if one film can have that kind of residual effect 40 years later, imagine if we had a couple more in there.
So this leads me to the big question. I know your bureau is not driving for the big ones, but a couple of years ago, I worked as background on Daddy's Home 2, which was down in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, man, this is right over the border. And I saw the number of people involved was just enormous. And the dollars that had to have gone into that state were in the millions. And I was thinking, wow, I don't ever see this in New Hampshire. Is it because we don't have the incentives? We don't want to do the incentive? What's going on with our government? Maybe it's our politicians, or I don't know where that lies. Yeah. What's going on there?
Well, because
one every 40 years, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you're right, one every 40 years is not a good record.
It's not a good record, And it's hard, actually, to just keep referring to that one film and try to convince people there's an active thing going on.
Yeah.
But the first answer to your question, I would say that the reason we don't have Hollywood productions here in the state is solely because we don't have an incentive. And I'm not getting yet into the weeds on the reasons why. I'm just saying that when Hollywood calls and they're looking to film, and it used to be, I'm looking for XYZ location. Can you help me out? And they would usually blanket a few states. We would all send our location packages. They would look over them and they'd say, oh, you know what? New Hampshire looks interesting. Let's do a scout there. Now I pick up the phone, Sony calls, and the first question from the producer is, what's your percentage? And if I say, we don't have a financial incentive, okay, thanks. That's it. That literally is the conversation.
That's sad.
So,
that's pretty sad.
Yeah, and there's no me trying to buffer that with other benefits. Like, oh, wait,
Yeah.
you got
We have 12 McDonald's.
You know, a decade ago, I'll be honest, a decade ago, one of those conversations would be, well, New Hampshire doesn't have a sales or income tax. Excuse me. And they would flinch. They'd be, well, that's kind of interesting. How can we make that work to our advantage, especially the sales tax? I would use that all the time. Now it doesn't matter, because as a producer, I could go to any state that has an incentive, okay? And I could say, hey, we're going to shoot here. What about your sales tax? Here's a form. Fill it out. We'll waive you your sales tax. So productions can go to any state now, and that is part of their incentive package. They can get their sales tax waived. So being at a disadvantage for not having a film incentive and trying to push our economy, our structure here, is difficult, you know. And so the answer clearly is we're going elsewhere. They don't care if we have beautiful mountains, lakes. We could have fantastic people, communities that are into film. It doesn't matter. The question is, what's your percentage? And if you even try to get into that ball game and do something a little creative, because you can't go full send and say, hey, we're going to have a 25% tax credit, but we're going to do something kind of nifty, you know, they won't buy it. The industry does not want to relearn incentives. They know they can go to like 36 other states and get what they need in a phone call. And on that number, it's an interesting shift happening there. You know, 5 years ago, New Hampshire was 1 in 6 states that did not have a financial incentive for film. Now we're 1 in 16. So there are some states that are starting to rein that back. I don't know why, because the states that have them are very aggressive. They're very aggressive. But whether a film incentive is right for New Hampshire or not, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, because there's 424 people in the State House that need to make that decision.
Yeah.
And
do they not see the economic impact? What prevents them from even bringing it up as a topic?
It's hard, and I'll tell you that in my tenure, there have been 8 pieces of legislation that have dealt with film incentives in some way since 2013. 6 of which, I believe, 5 or 6, were actually tax credit bills. The rest were like study commissions to take a look at it, which would have been great to have that conversation. And a separate sort of film fund that was this year for incentivizing production. All have failed. And it's something that I've seen since 2013. The difficulty is, it's very hard to make the argument of the benefit of film coming into your community and spending their money when you don't have a paper trail back to the coffers. And Massachusetts, you know, taxes on everything, you know. At least you have a paper trail. You can say this production spent this money on this, and you can see how much of that.
That was the big fight last year, wasn't it? About they were trying to decide whether or not to keep their incentive, and
exactly
the paper trail was important because they proved the impact that they actually had by going in there.
Now, I argue that a production that comes in, they spend their money in the community, and it filters back to the state indirectly. You know, there's a crew person that might be able to afford buying a house. Okay, there's money back to the state on that. These trucks come in. They have loads of gear and things like that. Gas tax.
Yeah, right. That's
Things-
not small.
Things like that, not small. So there are these indirect ways to explain how this works. To get hard data, it's difficult. That's really hard. And
Well, the longer you go without a paper trail, the harder it is to prove it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. And the other thing that's made this difficult is it takes education over time to get legislators on board with this. And Massachusetts was successful because they had an outside organization, they had the Massachusetts Production Coalition, that hammered at their legislators for years on this. New Hampshire has a 2-year election cycle. So by the time we get into the first year and they start educating them about film, we're already looking at re-election, and we may lose seats, we may gain new people in there, we're starting the process over again. Same thing with the governor. You know, it's just this constant momentum that doesn't allow any moss to stick. And we have to start fresh again. You know, and I respect where our House Ways and Means, who sees this bill, I see where they're coming from too. I see their point that, you know, them giving out a tax credit is a potential loss in revenue for the state because it's going to a company, and I've had to explain how this actually works. You know, it's
so is part of your job to go before these agencies?
if I get called for it, yeah. If there's a bill that comes up and there's something about film and tax credits, you know, they obviously want to know more, so I get grilled on that, which is fine. I'm happy to do it. But I see a lot of misunderstanding on how it works, and there's a misnomer when you say tax credit. It's not a credit against any taxes that they pay while they're here. You know, they don't get a percentage of rooms and meals tax back or anything like that. It's a production company will come into a state, say you have a 25% tax credit, and they spend $1 million on location. You know, they're going to get a certificate back for, if they can show in their audit that they've spent that money here, they'll get a tax credit for $250,000. Now, the production company doesn't reside in New Hampshire, so they have no reason to file for a tax return in New Hampshire. So they'll sell it to another company that does reside here, a utility company or another private company or whatever. Usually 75 cents on the dollar, let's say.
They're selling the credit?
They're selling the credit. So now it's not even a full $250,000, it's down. And that company that resides in New Hampshire can now use that to apply it to their tax return at the end of the year. Does it decrease revenue in the state? Yeah, but I think the cost of production offsets that.
Yeah, well, I haven't heard anything about, so I'm hearing a lot about how they think it's costing us revenue, but I don't hear anybody, or at least you haven't brought up yet, anybody talking about the money that's coming in. All of it. You brought up initially about the restaurants, the hotels, the gasoline, the utilities. That's all being spent here when they're not spending that outside and then bringing something in.
Yeah.
There has to be some positive cash flow.
Yeah, I always say that everything you can think of as far as business goes has the potential to be used for a film production. You know, they got to go to lumber yards, build their sets, florists for greenery. You know, the caterers, they got to pay and get their food and their supplies. You know, so there's this trickle down effect that happens with production, and you can see where the money flows. You know, there's a story that goes around the film commissions where I think somebody locally actually had worked on a production a long time ago, like in the 80s, and they were, I think, upstate New York, and this was the time when we had the $2 bill, and the production paid all the businesses with $2 bills, and everybody was like, where are all these $2 bills come from? And they started to see it flow through the community. So there's a visual representation there of when a production comes in, where that money can go and how it spreads through the community. So there is an economic benefit to this. And I would love to give it a try, you know? I mean, craft something that sunsets, quickly or whatever. But if we can get one or two projects in here, just to get ourselves on the map again.
Yeah, I
And,
constantly, I'm on boards and I'm not a board member, I mean, I'm on sites for casting. And it's amazing what's happening down in Massachusetts. The TV shows that are up. City on a Hill is a new one down there they're doing. Smilf they're doing down there. And then they do the movies that come up. And Adam Sandler's down there right now casting for some new movie.
Yeah.
I just sit there, and of course I got to drive to Massachusetts and eat down there and pay gas down there to those folks if I want to. So it just seems, man, this is just, it's it makes me scratch my head. I can't imagine what your job must be. To see this stuff just go by your window all the time.
Oh yeah, good example of it. Back in 2013, I think it was, Labor Day, a Paramount film with Kate Winslet and Josh Brolin. It's a New Hampshire story written by a New Hampshire author, Joyce Maynard. Okay, we tried to get that here. They ended up shooting in Massachusetts, all for except one scene. We got one quick scene. They spent $13 million in the state of Massachusetts. Not here. Yeah, exactly. So the good thing about what Massachusetts is doing is that we're such a small, tight-knit region. I have a lot of people from New Hampshire working on these projects. So as long as those big Hollywood films are coming to Massachusetts, we have people working on them. Would I love it in the backyard? Yeah, I love it right here. But we're small enough where we can kind of get around quickly and easily. And we've got a number of crew that work on those projects.
So what happened? What's going on daily at your bureau? You show up in the morning, your answering machine's blinking, you've got calls from somebody. What's going on during the day there?
Usually there are calls from a producer or two that are either already planning on filming here for whatever project. Typically it's like Discovery Channel or something like that. They're already slated to come here, and they want some assistance with, maybe they want to film on a state park for a day, or they need to film on the side of a road somewhere, and we need to do some permitting for that, or looking for specific locations while they're here. So it's a variety of different things. Every project is a little different. It's always interesting where they could end up and what they're doing, and whether or not you have to say no. Some of them would be kind of crazy, but sometimes there are crew referrals. They'll say, hey, we're coming in, we need a couple extra PAs to work on that. And so I look for production assistants, and I send a few names their way, and they get some work out of it for the day.
You keeping active rosters for that stuff?
Yeah, I do.
Very up to date, and
Yeah.
as long as we're on it, folks who want to be on those lists, what would they have to do to contact you?
They can either just go to the website and email me or call me, and it's actually an online registration now, so you can sign up yourself and put your credits in, upload your resume if you want.
Nice.
So that resource is one of the primary things that producers will look for. Hey, we're coming to the state. Do you have a list of crew? I might need another camera person, type of thing. So then they'll go to that. I'm in a position where I unfortunately can't recommend one individual because I represent all of them.
So you would just give them the database itself?
I give them, if they're looking for assistant camera people, I'll give them assistant camera people, and I think the database spells out clearly, if you look at their resumes and their credits, who you should be talking to. We have people at all different levels, and my goal is to try to get those people just starting out up on the next rung on the ladder, and just kind of keep that building. It's difficult now, only because we're losing a lot of students that are studying projects, studying video and production, and they're leaving the state and going elsewhere because there's not a lot happening here.
Another impact.
It is. It's another impact. It goes right down to even the impact of what schools are offering film and video production programs, because people are spending money there, and if there's not a lot of activity, then the school won't offer the program, and that kid is going to go elsewhere. So trying to reverse that's the challenge. And there are a lot of variables in this. And sometimes in my career here, it's people are very quick to boil it all down to, why isn't Hollywood knocking? You know, why isn't this happening? We need to do more to bring. Well, there's a lot of pieces to that. You know, one of the tricky things about incentive legislation is that usually there's a minimum spend requirement to be eligible to get that tax credit. Okay. Along with that is a certain number of hires, local hires. Say 50% of the crew has to be from that state. We're in a position now where we haven't had a film incentive for so long that we're losing people. Okay. So if ever an incentive were to get on the books, who's going to come knocking? Hollywood's going to come knocking. What are Hollywood films? Hollywood films are union films. How many union crew do we have?
I was just going to ask you about the union status.
Okay, so we have lost a lot of union crew to other states. And would that production be eligible anyway? Because the majority of the crew right now, if a Hollywood film were to come to New Hampshire, the majority would come from Massachusetts. That's where the crew would come from. Sure, there would be probably 25% that would be from New Hampshire. But the majority of that crew is going to come from another state.
Wow.
Until such time that reverses and New Hampshire becomes that hub and people flock back here. What I would really love to see, if I could just wave a magic wand, I'd love to see New Hampshire become a place for like brick and mortar production companies. Like they come here, whether it's like a post-production company. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, great, you're filming in Massachusetts, doing your thing, but there's an awesome editing company, you know, in New Hampshire, or special effects companies, or various television broadcasting equipment companies, or rentals, or things like that. Then you kind of start building that infrastructure up, and then people come back and
so we don't even have that here at this point?
We have some. We've got a number of small production companies that are doing a lot of work. We have a handful of visual effect companies. We have one company down in Derry right now that is actually turning itself into studio space and equipment rental, which is really going to be handy since they're right on the I-93 corridor. So that'll be nice. But we have these various, we've got about, if I were to open my directory today, between companies and individuals, we probably have about 550 solid people that, are here.
Across the spectrum of
across
talents.
The spectrum. Yeah, between production assistants to production companies and editors and carpenters or what have you. So we have it. We just need a couple of projects to get that off the ground.
I know that, have you been down to that, for all intents and purposes, the Hollywood studio down in Fort Devens?
Yeah, no, I have
They're
not
filming
seen
Castle
it, but
Rock
yes,
down there right now.
familiar with it, yeah.
Oh my God. It's a Hollywood studio.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling how big this thing is.
Yeah.
And fascinating to see it work. That would be great to have up here. I mean, it seemed to me we'd have plenty of places to put something like, I don't know what that would cost. I'm ignorant about that, but it would seem to be some spillover from that kind of stuff, again, to get to your point about editing and all of that. It'd be great if some of that could kind of spill over into New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Some of that work. It's terrible to have to keep it all down there.
I keep talking with people that are looking to build studios, and this one in Derry that's coming together is going to be really nice. If I had my druthers, the guy asked me one day, if you could have a set in here, what kind of a set would you want built that people could use on a regular basis? And I have two. I would either want a kitchen set or a hospital set. I get all sorts of calls.
No kidding.
For hospital rooms, for productions, for various industrial videos and short films and things like that. And it's very difficult to get into a hospital to film. And so having like a set stage that could be maybe like a nurse's station in a room would go a long way. for commercials and print and
Wow.
things like that.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, and it just goes back to that it's the money's just not coming out of Hollywood.
So when someone like that approaches you, are they also looking for funding and saying, "Here's the state"? Is there anything out there to help, or are they just?
That's usually a question from the really small up and coming filmmaker that is just kind of looking for any kind of resources, and bless their hearts. I wish I had the funds to do something like that. There's not a lot out there. What we have tried to do is support filmmakers. They still do it, but there was a craze a few years ago for crowdfunding. Everybody was using Kickstarter platforms or Indiegogo or GoFundMe to raise money for their films. And the film office at one point actively tracked New Hampshire projects that were doing that and would promote it. Say, hey, let's support independent film here. Here's a person's campaign. And that worked. And then that's sort of died off now. We don't see as much of that. But there aren't a lot of funding resources in the state for film. You're kind of going at it alone. So we have to provide resources in other ways. We have to be able to, I talk about state parks and permitting. We need to streamline a process that allows these digital media companies to come and use our backdrop, and so people can see it elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it's state government, and it's a process. Usually it goes off without a hitch, depending on what agency you're working with. I work with DOT all the time on road permissions, whether somebody's filming on the side of a road or wants to close a road or something like that. They're fabulous over there. Fabulous. And as long as you have the answers to the questions and are asking the right questions when you go into it, you can plan properly and you can get it done. And there are a lot of filmmakers that come to my office very skeptical about permitting. The minute you start talking about permits, they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to get into that and raise red flags. And what I do with filmmakers, particularly with police departments, I usually tell indie filmmakers, contact this police department, you're going to be in town. Oh God, I don't want to do that. I'm making a horror movie. What are they going to think? And so I try to reframe that for them. And I say, look, don't think of permitting as just like a bureaucratic process here. Think of it as instant marketing. Because what you're doing is you're going to an agency who knows nothing about your project, and you're trying to get this done. And in the process, you're educating these people about what you do and what you're trying to build. And if they help you with this, they are automatically going to be interested in that end product. They're going to want to see what they helped with. So you can go back to them and say, hey, I came to you guys 3 months ago. I made this movie. Here's a copy of it for you.
Smart.
Or the cop that had the cruiser who could do a drive-through on our shot. Hey, here's a copy of the film. They show it to people. So permitting is more about education and marketing your project, in my opinion, than just a bureaucratic roadblock.
So that's a lot of negative.
Yeah.
What's positive happening? What's going on? What is happening in the state? Do we have any TV? Do we have any projects that are ongoing? What's the buzz down there at your bureau?
Yeah, and I'm going to step back one. And when we talking about the negative, the interesting thing here is there are positives that come out of that. And the biggest one I've seen over 17 years has been, with all the focus on the Hollywood films going elsewhere, the little guys have not gotten the attention they've wanted. So they've looked to me. And if we can carve out a nice little niche in independent film, I'll take it.
So how's that
Come on
happening? Talk about that. So an independent filmmaker wants to come. I mean, I do want to get into in a minute any connection you have with the New Hampshire Film Festival. That's coming up in October.
Yeah.
And it's ironic we have the New Hampshire Film Festival with no big films.
Yeah.
So get into the independent part of it. What's the life of an independent gonna look like when they come to you and are they just looking for places to shoot?
They're looking for the basics. I think in general, independent filmmakers are looking for, and there's different levels of independent filmmaker. If you're talking like the really micro budget, I'm just doing this on a shoestring filmmaker, I think they're looking for validation. And if they can contact my office, and I can say, you know what, I'll help you open a few doors. You know, if I can get you a contact, call this person, tell them you talked to the film office, that can go a long way. You know, let's grease some skids here and get things moving. Because a lot of times, New Hampshire is so underfilmed that if I were this young filmmaker coming up with a project and I go to another agency or organization and try to pitch them what I'm doing, you're going to get that deer in the headlights look, okay? And they're going to be like, you're trying to do what on our property? What? So if they can then use me as sort of the grease that kind of helps that move forward, that agencies now go, oh, okay, well, he or she has contacted the state film office. At least they're trying to be on the up and up. You know, they're not trying to hide and be a guerrilla filmmaker running around. So, and I can vouch for that. I can say, you know, I can't speak to how great the project's going to be, but I got this independent filmmaker who wants to come in and he wants to do this, and I think it's good for everybody involved. And more times than not, people will say yes. You know, there'll be an occasion where, just given the logistics of what they're trying to do, you got to say no. You know, and I'm not afraid to tell people no either. If I get a filmmaker, my job is not just to be a yes man and say, yes, we want your project here, come film. Sometimes you just got to be like, no, we can't close down I-93 for 2 weeks. It's not going to be possible. And that's a big scale. That has happened.
Really? Someone asked you that?
Oh, yeah. And that was a Hollywood film. That was way back.
They wanted to shut down 93.
Yeah, their request was they wanted a stretch of interstate highway that they could shut down for 2 weeks for shooting. And so they went to all the states, and they came to me, and I was like, you know, I only have like 3 interstate highways here. I just, you know, there's not much I can do with that. But sometimes you got to tell the small guys no too. If they're going to be running around, you know, with fake weapons and things like that, and you just got to be like, no, you can't be on this property doing that, especially if you're not going to be, you know, getting permissions from neighbors or things like that. There's a process to things. And what I hope to do is just have conversations with filmmakers and maybe tap into things that they weren't thinking about, because they're so tunnel visioned on their project. They've written their script, they're trying to get their movie made. And sometimes they don't see the different pieces that can go into this that could ultimately help them as well. You know, I routinely tell filmmakers that when you're shooting in a community, contact the schools. Let them know that you're doing something, and there may be a program at that school that deals with video production where those kids being able to shadow an independent film for a day would do wonders.
Yeah,
for them.
That's really good.
And
I hadn't thought about that.
And then again, what you've done is created community buy-in into your project. So there's this cyclical thing that happens when a production comes in, and businesses get impacted, but the community gets impacted as well, and everybody ends up working together on this. And when you have filmmakers that are really trying to delve into their creative process, they miss those opportunities. They miss those connections. So I'm here to kind of take a step back and another 10,000 foot view of what they're doing. And here are some of the opportunities that can help your project and can help the community that you're trying to film in. It's interesting because when I went to film school, I went to Keene State here for film, and back in the early 90s, and I wanted to be a writer-director. And had that creative spirit. Then I moved to Los Angeles and started working out there. Bounced around in commercial production for a little bit. I was with a commercial production company for a couple of years. Then started bouncing around on various Hollywood films. And the last one that I worked on was The Time Machine with Guy Pearce. And I ended up working in the production office. And my friends were all working on the set. They were all like, oh yeah, we're doing things on set. I had a buddy from Keene State who was working in the production office, so he kind of helped me get the in there. But it opened my eyes to another side of production that I wasn't aware of, having done the on-set side. Now I was tight with the production manager, the producers, the various like coordinators, like special effects coordinators and things like that, getting an inside view. And then I would have to go over to, after production wrapped, we had a big insurance claim that came down on the project that I had to stay on. And so we got moved over to Amblin at the Universal Studios. Now, if you know anything about me, I love Spielberg. I grew up on his stuff, and that's what I wanted to be. So being in his environment was amazing. But I was doing it in a very different capacity than I thought. It was all about the logistics side of it, the paperwork, the numbers, things like that. And I sort of carried that with me when I came back east. And working in a film office, to me, is just like working in that environment. It's following paper trails and logistics and making sure everybody is set with what they need to do on the set. And so I kind of take that view.
Yeah, you forget about those people.
Yeah.
When I was down there at Castle Rock working, I was just background. But it's not until you're on a set like that and you look around and you see the dozens of people who never get seen, who are behind the scenes. There has to be, for every one actor, there's probably 5 to 10 people behind the scenes doing stuff that you just can't even begin to imagine. So all these production assistants and all of that, I mean, this is just...
running around with their walkie-talkies.
Yeah,
and, it's an army.
It is. It's fascinating to see.
Yeah.
And there's just this handful of actors, but there's guys coiling wires, there's guys that are just sitting there facing 5 monitors, there's people who handle the food, make sure that that's all they do.
Yep.
It's their job.
That's their job.
Food.
And if you vary from that one job and try to do a second job, you'll get called out on it.
Isn't that true? Yeah.
It's like, no, you're not here to move that light. That person is here to move that light.
Yeah.
And it was a very fast. During the Time Machine, I did get a chance to spend some time on set and just kind of observe what was going on. It's just amazing.
It is amazing.
To watch that all in motion.
Yeah.
And it's funny too because we'll have projects come in. I was at Keene State when Jumanji came and filmed, so I was able to watch that process, and it was always funny.
So we had 2 films filmed here.
Yeah, but not in total. Not in total.
Okay.
So, we've had a number of films that have been like, various scenes and pieces. But to watch the crowd come out and not understand that there's a lot of waiting in film, and you know this, and you know this. It's you set up, you do your take, and then there's another 20 minutes of
easily
reset.
Easily.
Yeah. So there's a lot of waiting, and people would come out and they would be impatient because they wanted to see a show, and it's not a show.
Yeah.
This is production.
Yeah. When we were working on Daddy's Home 2, they had taken the Lawrence Showtime Cinema area over.
Yeah.
And so they would put up all the extras in the different theaters.
Yeah.
And so the first day you'd show up, there's like 300 people for extras. The next day there'd be like 175 because 125 didn't want to sit around waiting.
Yeah.
And you might only be on set for 20 minutes for the day, but you were there for 10 hours.
Right.
You had to be on call. And 125, I'm like, no, I'm out of here. This isn't cutting it.
Yeah.
But on the good side, to do that, they treat you well.
Yeah.
You can use, for the most part, your technology. You can use your phone and that kind of stuff, as long as you're not taking pictures and things that you shouldn't be. But they feed you all day long. Mm-hmm. And then you still have to have breaks. They're written right into the contract. Yeah. And so even though you're sitting there doing nothing, every 2 hours someone's coming by and saying, okay, it's lunchtime, it's break time, lunchtime, break time. It's pretty crazy what goes on, but you do have to wait a lot.
You do.
A lot.
You do. So that's pretty much, just being that extended resource. I try to stress to productions that, especially newer filmmakers, that I'm not a free production assistant. I get laundry lists a lot. Like, hey, we're coming in and I need this. And it's like, okay, well, here are the phone numbers to people that you need to call. I do that a lot with film students. I think students need to understand the process of making some calls and sort of being able to pitch your project succinctly and trying to get what you need. So I'll definitely give students phone numbers and say, here, you need to make the calls. I'm not doing this. You can drop my name if you want, but you're doing this on your own.
Interesting, because I see a lot of stuff from BU, Emerson. I don't see a lot from film students in New Hampshire. I don't know why. Maybe I'm in the wrong circles or something, but
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of student filming going on
Yeah.
down in Boston. A ton of it.
There's a ton.
Yeah.
There's a ton.
What is there? Is it just because it's Boston? I mean, obviously we do have people that are filming here.
Yeah.
Are they just getting lost in the noise? How come they're not more?
The students?
Yeah,
The student
they're not
filmmakers?
more noticeable. Where are they posting all their stuff?
Oh, it's all online.
Yeah.
That's the thing nowadays, and it's funny. They're sometimes doing themselves a disservice, because if they want to try to go the festival route, the minute you post your film online, a lot of these festivals are like, sorry, you've made it available online. We don't want to screen this.
Man.
So, but that tool is available. Filmmakers now are just skipping festivals, and they're going straight to online. I mean, that's the thing.
It's an interesting way to look at it, because you have to have some kind of, you just can't throw your film up there, can you, and assume 2 million views. It's not going to happen.
It's
You don't have a following.
how you market it. It's how you market it. But those days of the '90s, where you had to take your independent film and go shop it at a film market or an independent film or a festival, those days are gone. That nobody goes to a film festival now looking to buy your film for distribution. And so filmmakers have become savvy. It's like, look, I don't necessarily, I would love a distribution deal, but I could put it on the internet now and market it myself and try to get it seen. So the game has really changed over the last 20 years, and it'll change again. We're walking around with our smartphones, and people are watching things right there on that
Yeah.
screen. And,
Yeah.
it's a very different industry. I just hope, I'm a film purist myself. I love working with film, and I just hope that in this advanced age of digital technology, we don't lose sight, or students don't lose sight, on where that came from and how you create an image and how you piece together things to create a story. It's so easy now to take your digital cameras and just keep shooting and shooting and shooting and filming and cutting that stuff together, where in my day, and here I am dating myself going, in my day, you had a roll of film, and you had to think about what you were going to do before you pulled that trigger, and hope to God it came back from the lab with something up there. And then you had to piece it all together and physically cut. There's a thing that Spielberg has talked about in articles in the past about how much, he loves the digital technology and nonlinear editing, but physically editing film. It's about like taking a moment and thinking about what you're doing before you use that razor, and cutting a piece of film and then putting it back together with tape. It gives you a slower process. Now everything's click, 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 click. And I fear that today's filmmakers are missing some of that. They really need to go back to the basics of, like, how did this all evolve? And what did these filmmakers learn from the process? Having to load a camera,
Right.
have it developed.
Yeah, have it developed, yeah. That alone.
I had two student films when I was at Keene State. We cut the negative on our film to get the final print. And that was unheard of. You don't touch your negative. You have somebody else deal with that. We would spend a weekend in a room that we put sheets down to make it as clean as possible and cut. And every cut had to be like thought out and made sure it would match. And you make one mistake, and how do you repair this now? And I think we've lost some of that with the digital technology and all the nonlinear editing. So It's really nice that some young filmmakers today are re-exploring like Super 8 film. You know, Super 8's making a comeback.
I didn't know that.
Which is great.
Yeah?
Oh yeah, it's making a comeback.
Interesting.
And they're picking up, you know.
Kodak may have a second life
They're
yet.
still producing it. They're still producing cartridges, and you can go out and get your 50 feet of film in your 3 minutes, and they've got new cameras now, and Super 8's a thing. And
Wow.
I'm glad.
Wow.
I'm glad. Now they can just bring back VHS.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I'll be happy.
That's not happening.
I'll be happy. So
How is your bureau related to the film festivals? We have several, right? We
Yeah.
have SNOB.
Yep.
We have the New Hampshire Film Festival. How are you tied in with them?
I do whatever promotion I can for them. I try to provide some programming. The New Hampshire Film Festival in particular, and SNOB, I run a various meetup discussion or something. I provide something to the festivals. SNOB Film Festival, I usually do a filmmaker meetup like on their Saturday morning so they can learn more about the film office and I can hear about their projects and just kind of network, that kind of thing. The New Hampshire Film Festival in Portsmouth, try to do the same thing, whether it's an industry gathering or if it's a panel discussion. I try to provide some sort of programming. I don't do any film selections or anything like that. They usually do reach out to me and say, hey, look, we're just curious about if there's something on your radar in New Hampshire that was recently, you know, finished up and we should know about, or I'll do the same thing with if there's a film that had just wrapped, and I'll give the festivals a heads up and say, hey, we have this project just wrapped, you might want to keep them on your radar. But I don't usually have a say in the selection process, and I stay out of that. The other film festival that's big right now is the Monadnock International Film Festival.
I didn't know about
Yeah,
that one.
MONIF. They've been running, I think they're year 6 now. They usually are in April, and they're in Keene. They're different. They're more of a curated film festival. They'll go out and they don't do a submission process. They go out and they find their slate of films. And unlike SNOB or New Hampshire Film Festival, they have a very linear schedule where it's one place for the weekend and your films are at different times, as opposed to having to choose what screen you're going to go to and see what at what time. So it's a very different film festival, but it's one of the big ones. You know, we have those three. Those three are the biggest, and the New Hampshire Jewish Film Festival also, which is like a month-long festival that goes like weekends and things at various venues around the state. That's very big too. So those 4.
So you basically just help them with publicity? Or?
Yeah, I let people know that it's happening. If there's a call for entries, you know, I'll let filmmakers know that, hey, submissions are happening now. And a lot of times I'll get calls from people from out of state looking for information on the festivals. You know, film tourism is a big thing right now.
I'll tell you, the only one I've been to was the New Hampshire Film Festival.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, swarms of people.
Yeah.
They shut down streets. They're just, it's amazing to me, the foot traffic that goes through there.
They've come a long way. They really have.
Are the others similar?
Yes. SNOB is a little smaller, and I'm glad. You know, it's nice to have something local that's a little more grassroots.
So they're through the Red River,
They
right?
do Red River. Sometimes they'll shake it up with other venues, but they've primarily been at Red River. And they do a really good job with sort of more underground film submissions and things like that. And MONIF, Monadnock International Film Festival, the films are usually more socially aware, foreign films, things like that, dealing with various social issues and topics. And it's...
They get a big draw?
They
in
do.
Keene? They do?
Yeah, they get a very nice draw.
Wow.
Yeah, so those festivals we're lucky to have them here. New Hampshire Film Festival does a thing on its first day called New Hampshire Day at Night, which focuses on New Hampshire made or any sort of a New Hampshire connection. So like if there's a producer, you know, we have a producer who is originally from New Hampshire who's out west a lot of times. He's bi-coastal, produces a lot of things out in Los Angeles. So they put a lot of his stuff in, just to keep that New Hampshire connection in. A lot of New Hampshire-made shorts get into that program. So, but
They had some crazy speakers out there too. David Spade, I think, was out there just a year or two ago.
See, they've really tapped into the film festival thing where you get it like a headliner to come in.
Yeah.
And
And they have some great boards too. Yeah, we can go in Q&As.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we've done that from time to time on various like filming in New Hampshire topics. We did one on film financing, and we had some people out from Boston and grant organizations and things like that. And then we've done another one on permitting process and various things that whatever calls I get that year, it's like, oh, this seems to be the frequent topic this year. People looking for.
Do you, with the evolution of technology, are you finding more and more questions about what can and can't be done? I'm thinking drones are now coming into play.
Yeah.
We're getting AI into play in some of these things. Are you fielding more questions technology-wise, or is it still just a lot of paperwork stuff like, do I need a permit?
No, drones is a big one. And that's one that I really never have a good answer for, because I don't think anybody knows yet what the final word is on that. What I typically do with drones is send them over to our aeronautics division over at DOT that deals with drones. They've got a better handle on what the FAA requires, and a lot of the folks that come in asking about drones are certified and things like that. So they've got a better handle on that. My rule of thumb is I don't need to know everything. So if I know the people that do know everything, I send them to there. I have a rule that I never keep a piece of paperwork on my computer if I can always get it somewhere else. So that's kind of the same thing with contacts. And it's like, if I don't know about drones, there's always somebody who will. So I'll send them over to them. I do know that our state parks has been developing policies on drones too.
I would think, yeah.
White Mountain National Forest is very tricky when it comes to drone flying. And,
it's not a privacy thing, right? Is it? I don't think, is it?
No.
It's more of a...
We have yet to see... There was like a big battle on the state front about drone usage and private use and all that, and privacy issues. I'm still waiting for all those laws to shake down and see what's going to happen legislatively. But, for the most part, my projects that come in are very set on, like, we want to film at Odiorn Point or something like that over the seacoast, and we want to fly a drone, or and usually it's okay. It's sometimes there are a lot of red flags that go up that really are unnecessary. I'm a filmmaker too, so when I see red tape pop up, I'm like, oh geez, here we go. We didn't necessarily need to do it this way, but okay, if we have to get it done, then we'll do it. But,
so what are you looking at down the road? So you've been here now, would you say 15 years? And you're
17, yeah.
Okay. And I'm sure you have to do like 3, maybe 5 or 10-year outlooks on things. What projects and stuff do you see that are coming down the road for the New Hampshire Film Bureau that you're preparing for?
I get asked that question a lot, and I don't think I ever have a good answer for it. I know now that I'm in tourism, they're more, they have better practice in like strategic planning and things like that, and I know we're kind of looking at that and how the Film Bureau can fit into those plans. For me, honestly, it's always been about customer service, and that's something that we really can't let go, because that's really our only advantage right now. We don't have financial incentives, but we do have an incentive of somebody at the film office who knows how to help you get your project made and connect you with the people who can also get that done. And word of mouth travels. I'm sitting here with you today for a reason. And the same is true with filmmakers. They call me and they say, so-and-so told me I needed to talk to you about this project. Can I set up some time? And I'm very quick to tell them, how's next week? And they're always like flabbergasted that they were able to get an hour with me, and we'll just sit and talk, and then the hour will come up and they'll have additional questions. I'm like, okay, let's talk some more. I want you to walk away feeling like you know your next step. And to me, it's always been about that. The 1.5 million, I get quizzed a lot on that, a lot. It's like, how come we're not doing more? So that number is not 2 million or 3 million. It's like that to me is the end game. My goal is not to work to increase that money. I would have arguments probably in my department with people about that. But the philosophy behind film offices for me is not that I'm here to increase that revenue to the state. My goal is to provide the best customer service I can and showcase New Hampshire as a film-friendly state so that they will film here and spend their money here. Because if they come in and they're spending their money and they leave feeling like they had a bad experience, they're not going to come back. The last thing I want to have happen is them coming into a community like Peterborough, and when the production leaves, Peterborough feels, oh, we never want to help out again. The opposite was true there. We had The Sensation of Sight, that film, the movie with David Strathairn, that filmed in 2005. And they filmed in Peterborough. And when they left, Peterborough felt like they wished they could just hold on to them. It's like we had a restaurant that was closing for a season, and, the revenue that they received from the production allowed them to stay open longer. And it kind of saved them for a few months. And the people in the town dealing with crew and stars, you build this family, and by the time the project wraps, you don't want to see it go. That's the experience that we want to have in New Hampshire. I want filmmakers to come into New Hampshire and feel like they can put Los Angeles behind them, and they can create, and they can be here, and they can roll their cameras without the pressures. I literally have arguments with filmmakers in Los Angeles who ask me about permits. And no, I'll put in a call to this person and get permission. Well, I need something on paper. No, you don't. Well, we need it in LA. Well, that's LA. You don't here. You have a conversation and a handshake. Maybe you sign an agreement if it's a bigger organization that needs it. But it's really easy. And that the end result to me will be shown in the economic impact of that.
So you're basically, I guess we're going to wrap this up soon, unless you have a lot more to say, which I would love if you do. But, you would say, so you do not proactively go out to try to attract business?
I have no reason. I have no reason right now. There's a locations expo that's held in Los Angeles every year where all the film offices are out there pushing their jurisdictions. I don't have anything that I can put up that says 25%. It doesn't make sense for me to go out to that environment and try to push New Hampshire when all I get is, well, so-and-so is doing this. 30% Louisiana, 25% Massachusetts. What are you offering? A handshake. That's
we have the White Mountains.
We have the White Mountains. We have these people. And that can only go so far.
Yeah.
That can only go so far. So I don't actively do that. And I gave up a few years. Back in 2010, we had some budget cuts. And I was heavily into print ads at that time. And then I just stopped. And I got into social media. And I had a huge uptick in inquiries the following year. And magazines continued to call, well, how come you don't do print ads anymore? I'm like, well, that's not what is connecting me to filmmakers now. Because all the print ads said the same thing. They were like, our financial incentives, view our packages online. Social media, I could have conversations, real live conversations. And I do this thing, I've been known over the years for doing what I call my meeting selfies. Any filmmaker comes into my office at the end of the meeting, I usually do a selfie. Chances are I'm probably going to do one with you by the time this is done. And what I've done is I've posted those. And I literally have filmmakers come to me now at the end of the meeting. If I have forgotten, they will remind me, hey, can we do a meeting selfie?
Really?
Yes, they want it. They want to be able to tell people that, hey, they went to the film office, we're working on this project. And they know that I'm going to tell people that, hey, I had 2 filmmakers in. They're working on developing a project for New Hampshire. Film office is here to help however we can. That's marketing you don't have to buy. You know, it's word of mouth, it's customer service, and I'll go on and on about customer service because I just think that, you know, I hear a lot about trade missions and various conventions and expos and things like that, and it's like that's, you know, right now for New Hampshire, unless there was an incentive, there's no reason for me to visit Universal and say, hey, here are the reasons why it's great to film in New Hampshire. You know, first of all, a lot of projects don't work that way anyway. There are a lot of projects in development right now that know exactly where they want to be. And so they're going to look at, well, where can we go to film and get the biggest bang for our buck? It's got nothing to do with, you know, I hear all the time about, oh, such and such film was about New Hampshire, so they really should have filmed in New Hampshire. It's like, well, yeah, you know, but there's other projects too. You know, there's projects doubling for other projects in various states, and we'll take what we can get. So we don't always have to take the New Hampshire story with the New Hampshire actor, and, you know, we don't need to do that. You know, let's get some commercial projects in here. We've had some fantastic commercial, like, national ads in here. You know, I get Jeep and Dodge doing photo shoots.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, they film all over our Lakes region, and photo shoots and video shoots, and we got some nice windy roads. And,
Yes, we do.
you know, roads by the lakes and things like that. I get a lot of requests for roads. That's a big thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm always out
Excuse my
there.
stomach.
No, it's almost lunchtime, man. But I'm happy to talk.
So, no. So I was hoping you'd drop some names. So Jeep is good, and I'm really glad to hear that. Are there other big name companies that love to come in here? And I mean, they don't have an open door policy, but you know, you see them on a regular basis.
Yeah, we usually see like catalogs like Orvis, and we had LL Bean for a while. I think they've since pulled back and done more in Maine. But a lot of the catalog shoots, it's an interesting story because I asked a couple producers a few years ago why they come to New Hampshire. And they said that, you know, we bring our company in and it's money to move people around. So in the week that they're there, if you're in Concord, you go an hour in every direction, and you're going to get a very different look.
That's for sure.
Mountains to the north, more farmlands, rural areas to the west, seacoast to the east, urban to the south. So they can accomplish a lot in those few days if they have to move around and get different scenics like that. That's an advantage. That right there is an advantage because we have so many diverse locations in a short drive. That's one of those things that I can push and people take notice. But it's more commercial production. It's more photo production, that kind of thing, and not necessarily feature film or television.
Do you work with any of the talent agencies as well, or does that not fall
Not
under
really.
your-
Are you talking New Hampshire talent agencies?
Yeah, so
or-
let's say Hannaford
Yeah.
or Shaw's or somebody wants to film. They're going to do commercials. Do they come to you at all?
No, they typically don't.
Okay.
They usually go to various casting agencies and things. And we have a couple in New Hampshire, but yeah, the talent is usually something that actually falls into a category like I would refer productions to them, like I would refer the production to camera operators. You know, there's casting and talent agencies, so I don't want to take on that role from them, and that's their job. So I'll post casting notices and things if there's a general blanket saying, hey, we're looking for 20 people for an upcoming shoot or something like that. call this number or whatever. Yeah, I'll spread the word.
Where do you post that?
Twitter, Facebook, the
Gotcha.
usual channels. And it's usually pretty well received, you know. And but yeah, I usually refer, if they're looking for something specific, I'll say, give New England Models Group in Manchester a call, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have we not covered anything? What?
Oh,
that
geez.
I'm serious. I've got time. So I mean, it's up to you. Whatever you'd like to chat about your agency. Is there anything that you do specifically that we didn't cover, and you're like, oh, I need to.
Oh, I don't know. I just, you know what? I think it all comes back to the incentive argument.
I know I hate that, but
I go back and forth on it. I always say that if your project, if you really want to shoot in New Hampshire, shoot in New Hampshire. You know, if you feel like you need to take advantage of a financial incentive in another state, go to another state. You know, I do think there'll be another attempt at some point to craft a bill. And the last few bills, man, have just, in my opinion, just been off track. They just have not addressed it correctly. So, but I don't write the legislation. You know, I just provide the information. I always remind legislators when I'm testifying about this that they always ask, well, do you feel we need this or whatever? I am here to execute the policy that they create. So if they feel that we need it, all I can tell them is that we have lost business without having one. It's as simple as that. Whether New Hampshire is the place for a financial incentive, I'm not entirely sure, you know. But I can give you a list of more projects that have filmed elsewhere than projects that have filmed here.
projects that have knocked on your door.
Projects that have knocked on my door, you know, they're filmed elsewhere.
Are you alone in your office? How many people do you?
Yeah, it's me.
It is.
It's me.
So I'm talking to the whole department.
You are. You are. That's the other thing. It's, you know, when people take meetings with me, they're surprised they can get a meeting. They're actually surprised that I'm picking up the phone. You know, they've got the guy. And so they thought they were going to get some executive assistant or something like that. It's like, no, you're talking to me. What do you need? And
that's actually a very good point.
yeah. You know what? I go and I visit classes, video production classes, and I tell students all the time that it doesn't matter whether you're a film student or if Steven Spielberg's calling. You're getting, see, that's my stomach that time. It's almost lunchtime here. I'm going to treat the projects the same. You know, this idea that Hollywood's coming knocking, you got to just give them the key to the state.
Yeah.
It's not true. It's not true. But I'm going to give the level of assistance to an up-and-coming filmmaker as well that I would give any studio film. You want location photos? I'll send you some. You know, I'll give you some pointers or guidance on where to film, that kind of thing. But it's strictly about relationship building. You know, it really is. And I'm hoping somebody listening to the podcast today will think, you know what, I hadn't thought about, I'm doing a project, I hadn't thought about a film office. People think of state government as a roadblock.
Yeah,
You know?
right.
And we have resources in our department, not just in film, but in tourism and in economic development. We're meant to help business along. And that's one of the primary reasons why I thought it was appropriate to move the film office into the department, is that you know, it mirrors everything that that department's trying to do. But on the same token, I mean, there's, you know, I came from a department that dealt a lot with arts and culture, and I focus on that with filmmakers too. It's not just about the economic development side of it. I want you to make your art, and I want people to see it. You know, part of my story is telling the story of what is happening here. And if that film's not getting made, that's one less thing I can talk about.
Right.
You know, so I want to be able to tell our governor, our legislators, executive council, people out of state, these are the exciting things that are going on in our state. These are the people that are creating them. Because it's, you know, it's simply not just about Hollywood anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Something very organic,
Yeah.
I think, in the state. They fly under the radar. It's a shame because we do think about the Hollywood stuff. They're the big gorilla, right?
Yeah.
But there is all this like subculture
Yeah.
out there that needs to be tended to, because sooner or later they are going to be the next big gorilla.
Yep.
And it'd be nice to have that gorilla come home once in a while.
If they say, hey, when I was up and coming, New Hampshire really put out its hand,
Yeah.
they'll come around.
Yeah.
You know? So, anyway, I hope I helped give you a little education.
Oh,
insight
it's
into-
great. That's
into
perfect
my
for me.
side.
I
You know?
learned a lot, as always, which is my goal,
Yeah.
to learn about these little niche things that I have no idea are out there, but I'm fascinated by them.
That's great.
So, anything else?
No, I thank you for having me on.
No, you're welcome. I told people were saying, 3 or 4 times, get him in, get him in, get him in. All right, I know. Reach out.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.